Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today as we come together to learn more about automated infrastructure with Pulumi and Azure. My name is Hassan Mohsini. I'm the program manager for Microsoft Reactor in Abu Dhabi. Microsoft Reactors are hubs for founders and developers to meet, learn, and connect to local peers, as well as industry-leading ideas and technology from Microsoft partners and open source community. It's also home to the Microsoft for Startups program. With a diverse mix of hands-on workshops, expert panels, and community events, there's something for everyone. Check out our calendar of events on meetup.com and join our coming sessions. Our speaker today is Hardik Mistry. Hardik is a founder of a bootstrap technology company, Appmatic, and works as a digital transformation consultant. He was awarded as a Microsoft MVP 3 times in a row. When he is not helping customers, you may find him helping as a speaker or mentor at the local user groups and meetups around the world. And you can connect him on Twitter at Mistry Hardik 05. That's his Twitter handle. And also during the session, feel free to keep asking questions. We'll have regular stops to answer your questions, and also feel free to tweet and tag us on Reactor Abu Dhabi and MSFT Reactor on Twitter. And you can adjust the playback settings to select the highest quality for the best experience in the session, and keep an eye on the Q&A tab. This is for you to send us questions, and also we'll be sharing some resources and links for you relating to today's session. And with all that said, I would like to hand over the mic to our speaker to start the session.
Thank you so much for a wonderful introduction, Hassan. And good afternoon, good morning, good evening, etc., 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 depending upon from where you are joining us today. And before I jump in, let me share my screen. All right, so so welcome once again. I'll be taking you on a journey of how can you automate your infrastructure using a platform or a framework called Pulumi, and in this case, we'll be using Azure. My name is Hardik Anant Mistry, and I am a three-time Microsoft MVP, wherein I am working as a consultant for helping customers who are looking to either digital transform their businesses or improve their existing digital journey. So this is a brief about me. I started a company called Appmatic. It's bootstrap technology consulting company. I help the community folks. I make sure that everybody around me has the right skills and the right knowledge to deliver on their community efforts as well as on their professional efforts. I do run Windows on a MacBook Pro, so I love playing games on my laptop. And yes, you can find me playing games on the MacBook itself. And I want to be a product manager someday, but let's see, sometime soon. So let's jump into the agenda itself without further delay. So what we're going to really talk about is trying to understand what is infrastructure as code. We'll try to understand why is it important or why does it matter. We'll also try to get an understanding of what Pulumi is, and we'll also try to know better that why and when should you use it in general. Also, we'll wrap it up with an interesting demo, a hands-on demo for all of you. So rest assured, sit back and relax, and let's get started. Now, of course, before we get started, like one more request for all of you community folks. What I want you to do is I want you to tweet about this event. It could be not just a tweet, but it could be anything that you may have on your site. You can use it Facebook or Instagram, etc. So the official Twitter handle for MSFT Reactor is the @MSFT Reactor itself. And you can see an example. Please don't copy it as it is. Okay. Feel free to tag me at Mr.Hardik05. Feel free to use hashtag, etc., etc. I'll let you do your imagination. So, okay, let's get started. So, I'll just walk you through a lot of boring slides. Basically, as you can see, it's sort of not so colorful, etc. It's just plain set of slides. I just felt that rather than really making a lot of complicated slides with a lot of complicated information. I just wanted to walk you through some main steps and then straight away take you to the demo that will save us some time as well. So let's understand what infrastructure as code really means. It allows you to manage your infrastructure. Um, it allows you to give you version control abilities. Now, I understand that some of you may not really understand the version control element here, but that's okay. With the demo itself, you'll get to know the benefits and why it matters, basically. So, and of course, it is used in conjunction with continuous delivery. Continuous delivery is also known as continuous deployment in some of the companies, CD, or in generally call it as CI/CD, continuous integration and continuous delivery or continuous deployment. Depends like what you really call in that case. Mainly when you're deploying a software, you generally say continuous deployment. When you deliver a solution to your end customer, you normally use continuous delivery, but it's synonymous and interchangeably used. So moving on, why does it matter? So some key things to keep in mind if you're not focusing on these things right now at your company or at your startup or even in general as just as a professional. So the benefits you get with infrastructure as code is you automate the lifecycle, meaning you can create infrastructure on demand, you can bring it down or tear it down on demand. You can basically expedite the whole lifecycle process of your infrastructure requirements. It might be Azure, AWS, or anything in cloud, basically. Um, because you are having infrastructure written as code, you obviously automatically get the benefit of documenting it in a proper way. At the same time, you are able to manage it more efficiently. And obviously, because you get to do all of these in an organized manner, you are also able to test and validate your production-like infrastructure at ease. What I mean by that is, generally all are aware of a common problem that we all have experienced, once in a while since your career started. We call it works on my PC problem. Meaning, imagine you are an engineer, you built some code, you deployed it to your source control, or you simply deployed a zip to your production environment or a pre-production environment. And suddenly somebody complains that something is not working. It could be nothing but a connection string error. It could be a port number issue. It could be something silly like that, or it could be something very critical, such as you did not install the correct package version or etc. Depending upon your requirement. The issue is that you need to make a request. There is a dedicated team responsible to provision and infrastructure. Generally speaking, somebody will provision you a server, and then they will deploy the server for you, etc., etc. It's time consuming. It takes a lot of number of things like that, basically. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we understand the benefits. At the same time, we also try to understand the what are the challenges if you don't follow. So the challenges includes obviously you need to physically do all of these things. It needs to be managed manually, and obviously because it's not documented, you end up with mix and match of infrastructure requirements. Sometimes you're not aware what version of SQL Server you want to use because as per your compliance or just because of a formal requirement, you might be wanting to use a specific version of SQL Server or for that matter, any particular component in your infrastructure, basically. But I hope you get the overall idea that doing it as infrastructure as code really gives you the advantage compared to really wasting time doing it manually, basically. So we jump on straight away to the platform that we're going to discuss and use today. Obviously, I'm not going to talk about comparing this with other options on the market. There are some popular choices that you obviously have and you might be using something called as Terraform or Azure ARM templates itself. Like they also give you the interesting ability to simply write a PowerShell script and manage all of these in a single execution CLI pattern. But the point is, we want to explore Pulumi only. So our demo today or our discussion today will be focused only on Pulumi and its benefits or limitations. If you have questions, I encourage you to ask them, but we are not going to discuss differences here at this point of time. We are simply going to focus on Pulumi and its good and the bad side of things, basically. So Pulumi is open source. That's the number one advantage. Their repository is available on GitHub, so you can obviously customize or tailor make that environment for your needs. It supports multi-cloud environment, meaning it allows you to connect with hybrid cloud scenarios, as well as you can dedicatedly use your own choice of cloud, multiple cloud options at the same time. And obviously, the best benefit here is the biggest advantage I see myself as a software engineer is I can write this code in a language of my choice. And the interesting part here is that it's not just limited to C#. It is possible for you to do the same demo, what I'm demonstrating today. You can do it very easily using JavaScript, or for that matter, Python or Java, etc., etc. So you have a bunch of variety which suits you best. You can use that one. And of course, the greatest advantage here is you don't need to learn a specific domain language, meaning you don't need to learn a separate scripting technique and things like that to really make use of Pulumi in general. And obviously, you'll see that benefit by the demo itself, which I'll be doing in a few minutes. So when and why to use Pulumi? So the biggest benefit you get by using Pulumi is that obviously you can organize your code or infrastructure in the format of a code, a simple program, and that will nothing but represent. Think of it like a blueprint of your infrastructure, but written in C# or written in JavaScript, etc., etc. So it's much more flexible for your software engineering people to understand what exactly is going in the infrastructure. So it's not just the program itself, but also allowing you to give the ability to understand better what the infrastructure really looks like. And obviously, you want to use this because you care about your infrastructure, and obviously you get the benefit of documenting it along the process. And obviously, you want to use the existing programming skills. What I've generally seen in my consulting experience so far, when it particularly comes to automating. So generally, this is also called as automation of infrastructure. Basically, infrastructure as code is nothing but you writing a program or a PowerShell script, and you can deploy it via CLI or some runtime interface, and that's it. You have your infrastructure on demand. That's great. All of the options on the market are good in their own ways, of course, but one of the biggest, I would not say limitation, but one of the biggest things I have observed in the industry is people who are going to deliver the solution, meaning software engineers in general, they have the resistance, not because they need to deliver the solution on time, but they also need to make sure that they need to manage their time when it comes to actually delivering the solution itself. Meaning, imagine you're on a tight deadline. You don't really want to spend too much time learning something new. You probably want to reuse what you already know or what you're good at, and you still want to, make the overall team more efficient at the end of the day. So in general, it allows you to adapt to the IAC faster. IAC stands for infrastructure as code. It's like the abbreviation. So that was some basic understanding around what Pulumi does, etc. And of course, I'll be opening some websites, and I'll be walking you through a much more interesting demo part. I mean, the slides are a bit dull, but that was just some key points I wanted to discuss, and slides were there only to give you the perspective, what I'm talking basically. So, so with the demo, we'll try to understand the importance of infrastructure as code, and we'll also try to adapt Pulumi in our solution. So I have some few slides which I'll be using to walk you through the scenario so that you're aware of what we are expecting from the solution and how we will come to the solution basically. So let's say MS Reactor is a community-driven technology company, and they want to automate their environment as follows. For example, this is something very common across all the software companies. You normally have stages. So here I'm just using conventional staging names, dev, pre-prod, and prod. Now, in this given scenario, sorry. So in this given problem statement or the scenario, the engineering team is a mix of C#, Java, Node.js programmer, and they want to reduce their learning curve. So that's one of the key problems that we want to address. So how do we solve it? Now, this is one of the scenarios again. So as a solution, like a hypothetical solution here, that they spent already some time reviewing all the options and they realized Pulumi is one of the best options on the market. But naturally, because they get to use their existing C# skills as per this demo, and obviously because they are using Microsoft Azure as their environment or the cloud provider. Now, so what I do is, like, this was the basic understanding of the particular problem and the solution itself. But the bigger element here is that how we'll be using Pulumi and how will we sign up to Pulumi, and then how will we adapt it to our requirement. So what I want you to understand is, I'll just switch out of my presentation and I'll just make sure that I am sharing the right screen. So I'll just switch to the particular experience. So I'll just share the basic screen that I have here. So I'm already sharing the screen, so you might notice that I'm already signed into Azure portal and things like that, basically. Now, what I want you to do is, in general, I want you to just follow what I'm doing on this particular screen here. So before I begin, there are some steps already laid out in the slides, basically. So if you may, which you'll be receiving at the end of the session. So I have already laid out the important steps, like how this works and et cetera, et cetera. So with some screenshots so that you guys can follow along later on when you try this at home, basically. So what I'll be doing is, I'll not walk through the slides one slide at a time, or I'll walk you through the experience itself or the demo itself. So as we understand, our requirement is we want dev, pre-prod and prod infrastructure. We want to manage that type of environment in those ways. So to do that, what we'll have to do is you'll have to sign up to Pulumi. So just for an example, I'll be opening a new private window and I'll go to pulumi.com. So Pulumi, as I said, is like an open source platform. So the best part is, like, if you compare the pricing, now this is just for your knowledge, by the way. So the community plan is free forever, and that's the best plan to start understanding and start learning the platform itself. It gives you all the abilities which you need as anybody who wants to do automation with infrastructure, basically. Of course, if you're a larger team or a larger organization, you can obviously adapt other plan. But in this case, we'll be using community. I can sign in with my account. So I'll be using my own email account, which I use to sign in. Okay, so I'll be using my email to log in. Right. So if you may notice, now, by the way, just to let you know that the sign up was done by the same email experience. You might have noticed there was GitHub and other choices as well for your social authentication. So you are free to try any other option that you can feel fine with. So once you sign into Pulumi, you're automatically given the organization, which obviously you're asked for when you sign up, basically. And then you can define a project under a stack. So stacks are nothing but they are logical components. So imagine stack, you can be grouped by the client for which the infrastructure you're managing. It could be grouped by the environment for which you're managing the infrastructure, such as dev, prod, etc. In our case, what we are doing is I just have one single experience here, meaning I have the project already defined. So just for your understanding, if I click the new project experience, this is the best part of Pulumi. You can see that they give you the choice what you want to do. Like, you want to use Google Cloud, Azure, AWS, or Kubernetes experience. So you can, let's say, choose Azure. I'll choose my choice of language. So I'll select C#, or of course, you can see there are more options, not just C#. So I'll click next. And then obviously I can fill in all these properties and things like that. Obviously, because I'm using Azure, you might need to make sure that you point it to the right location. In this case, it is automatically selecting West US. You can obviously edit it to be East US as well. I hope you can see my screen and the action that I am performing on the screen. So once you do that, you can create a project and then you're ready to start exploring more. So I'll just jump back to what I already have. So what I already have is the base experience. So I'm clicking on it and rather let me do this. Okay, so that takes me to the home page kind of experience wherein I can see like my dashboard with my stats and all my projects defined. So you can notice that I already have created a MS Reactor -demo as our project, and which also contains our base as our stack. So what I want to do is I want to automate my dev infrastructure wherein I'll be having a bunch of options such as app services or resource group, etc. Now, just to give you a perspective how to do that, when you go to the, like, I must say that the Pulumi documentation is really one of the best on the market right now. And they have really done a good job at defining all the minute details about how these things work, etc., etc. So if you may notice here, I'm in the Pulumi documentation section. None of this is created by me. It's officially from Pulumi themselves, basically. So obviously there are a lot of interesting details you can walk through yourself. So my interest is in the Pulumi CLI itself. So when I go to the Pulumi CLI section, which you can find somewhere in the bottom in the left-hand side, you'll be taken to the Pulumi CLI details, wherein you'll be welcomed with a lot of details such as which command works, how it works, etc. So of course, the Pulumi installation is already done on my laptop. It is done in a terminal. You might notice one thing that I am using a MacBook or a Mac OS environment. This is as easy as to configure even when you do it with Ubuntu or Linux or for that matter, Windows in that case. So for example, if I click install Pulumi, you can notice that they have been kind enough to guide you through, depending upon your environment, they will be giving you the steps to do according to the environment or the operating system that you have. So in this case, the installation is already done by me. Now, the important steps here is, if I may just take you back to my slide, which I've already included in the slide. So before I begin or before I start doing things, what important thing here is to know is you need to have an IDE which you use for your programming. It might be JavaScript IDE or a Visual Studio environment, etc. And you also want to make sure that you have Azure CLI installed and configured, depending upon what cloud provider you are using. Just to walk you through the experience, I'm assuming that you all are Azure users in one way or another. You may not have been able to log into Azure, but I'm pretty confident that you are a software engineer and you might have, once in a while used Azure in one way or another. If not, if you are not managing infrastructure, that's okay. So on the CLI interface, I will say Azure account show. So AZ account is the CLI that I'm using. Show means it will give me the details of the subscription I'm currently logged into. This is my personal Visual Studio subscription that I'm already logged into as a user. So I've already done this on my environment. Okay. Just for your experience, you need to do Azure AZ login. So when you do that, it will take you to a browser. It will ask you to sign in, basically. Because I'm signed in, I'm not going to do this right now. But in the off case, you might want to do it separately. Now notice I'm doing this from the terminal or a command prompt if you're using Windows, or a terminal again, or a command prompt depending upon if you're using Ubuntu, etc. So you need to do that as well. So right now I'll just close this and open it again as a separate window. So I'll just terminate that. So let me just open a new window, and if I say AZ account show, because I'm signed in, it will always remember that which account I'm currently on or which subscription I'm selecting, basically. So this is my subscription ID, etc., etc. Please don't try to hack it. Okay. Okay. So I'm signed into my Azure CLI. That was the important detail. And the next important detail is I need to then obtain the Pulumi project on my local computer. Now, for convenience, I have already done all of that before itself. But just for your experience, I try to replicate the same experience, that how it is created and how will you configure your project. So I'll click on new project once again. I'll choose an environment or the cloud environment here, in this case Azure. I'll choose C# as my language. I'll click next. And then in this case, I'll say MS Reactor -Azure. I'll leave the rest of the details as it is. I'll click on create project. Now, if you may notice, once I do create project, it does not download anything. It is just like that. I need to make sure, depending upon my OS, I have to obtain a copy myself, basically. So you may notice the interesting part is that they already laid out the steps required for you to perform on your computer to obtain the reference copy of that particular environment. So basically, this is already done by me. And in that case, I'll just take you to the Reactor solution or the project. Now, for convenience, if you may notice, I'm using Visual Studio here in this particular demo. And on the left, you can notice that I have my solution where you have two projects. One is MS Reactor Common, and then the another one is the MS Reactor demo itself, which actually contains your Pulumi project. So the MS Reactor demo is the project itself, the Pulumi project. MS Reactor Common is nothing but like a helper, kind of a shared library that I have created to manage the configuration and things like that. So the idea is that I want to read values from config.json. Now, if you notice, I already have the config.json open in my project, basically. So I have kind of a JSON structure. It's like a custom structure, by the way. This is not generated by Pulumi, just an FYI for your information. This is something I have created. Pulumi does not generate this for you. This is done by me. And you are free to, clone the repository and try something on your side, basically. So what we have here is we have defined the resource group name, the app service plan name. You can notice that we will create an app service plan, which is a Linux plan, because supposedly that is less expensive. We'll be having a web environment, an API environment, and the application insights to monitor the statistics of the applications. So this is like a very simple infrastructure that we want to manage, basically. So in the mystack.cs file, now this is generated by Pulumi itself, but it is it comes only with resource group or some dummy scaffolded program. In this case, I already have the entire structure ready, meaning I have the app service and everything else ready, so that it's easy and it saves time for us to complete the demo, basically. So if you may notice, what am I really doing is I'm just using regular C# and I'm just wiring the components, and I'm saying that, okay, this is my infrastructure. For example, you may notice on line number 31, I am creating an instance or an object for resource group. How interesting is that? I mean, I can use C#. And so essentially, one important detail you should understand is that even if it's Pulumi, Terraform, or anything you may use on the market, you may have realized that you do need the understanding of the keywords, or basically the core concepts of cloud themselves, basically. So you do know, you should know what is resource group, you should know what is a plan, you should know what is a app service, etc., etc. So basically what we are doing is that we are defining all of those resources as C#, basically. I am setting a location, I am setting the tags, I am even defining the size of the resource, the SKU, and sorry for my mouse scrolling, 1 second. There you go. So if you may notice or pay attention to the lines that I've selected, you may notice that I am also defining the resource group name. I am also defining the kind or the type of the app service. In this case, it will be Linux. I am saying that, okay, because it's a Linux plan, you should set it as reserved as true. If you don't do that, it will give an error. I'm setting the SKU there, where I'm saying that, okay, the size, for example, will be basic B1. So I'm using I'm asking the C# program to create me an infrastructure which is of V1 app service plan. Along with that, I am defining the application insights. And if you may notice, I'm also creating a app service. If you may notice my cursor selection on line number 89, I am also defining an app service and explicitly calling that as a web app service. This is just a variable name or an object name, as you can imagine. This is nothing to do with what Pulumi calls it. Of course, the framework of Pulumi is kind enough to give us all these classes. So if I right click and go to the implementation, or rather, let me go to the declaration, you can see for yourself that it is defined by Pulumi itself. You can notice it is part of the Pulumi.Azure namespace in this case, meaning it is not defined by me, it is defined by Pulumi itself, basically. So again, coming back to the demo itself. So what we're doing is we're also setting some details such as the site configuration, meaning I'm saying that, okay, allow all the origins to access my website. In some of your cases, like I have been part of projects where, you have restrictions to only certain IP address or a certain website only. So basically you can define, let's say, you can, for example, do this like something like this as well. Meaning only this particular website will be allowed to access this particular resource, and so on and so on. But of course, in our case, for simplicity, I'm using asterisk so that it's open to all of us to try and explore. So that's what I'm doing here. I am just defining some basic environment with some basic details, such as the app settings, run ID, and things like that. Now, again, the important detail here is that if you're somebody who does not know what an app service plan is, it's all right. You might need to learn that first so that you can take advantage of something like Pulumi or any other choice you may go with for automating your infrastructure. So since this is available for us now, means the program is already available for us. So what I want to do is I want you to experience how will you do it by yourself manually. And then I'll walk you through how will you automate that via a pipeline or a build pipeline, which I've already set up so that it's easy and time saving for us. So what I'll do is I'll come back to my particular terminal, or in your case, it could be a command prompt. You may notice that I'm in a project directory which contains the Pulumi YAML file. Now notice this in the left-hand side. When you define a Pulumi project and when you obtain a copy on your laptop or your desktop, the project directory that you obtain via Pulumi itself should contain the YAML files, basically. If it's not there, it will not be able to identify your infrastructure or your stack configuration. And if that does not happen, it will not work correctly, basically. But in my case, if I simply do ls, you can notice that it contains the YAML file. So I'm in the correct directory. So that's good. What I want to do is I want to say Pulumi stack ls. So Pulumi CLI has a lot of great help also. So when I do Pulumi help, let me just get some. Yeah, okay. So if you notice, there are some interesting commands. So you can also do Pulumi help to get some idea of what command to run and what command will do what. So stack is what we're interested in. So let me clear my window. So clear, I'll say Pulumi stack ls. You may notice that because I already set up the project, I have a stack called base. Now again, this is just for your information. Base is not something created by Pulumi itself. It has not been created automatically by anybody. It is created by me before the demo started or before the session started. Now the base stack is nothing but a logical, think of it like a container. Think of it like somebody like a memory footprint. So it kind of points it as a reference to that particular stack. In this case, we are using something called base because we need something at a base level when you run a automated pipeline. How does it matter or why does it matter? You will get to know better when we explore the build pipeline that I already created. For now, I want you to know that I want to basically provision the same infrastructure which you see here. In short, I want you to know that we want to deploy this to Azure itself. I want to deploy it or provision it, as we call it. So I'll say Pulumi stack init. So the init keyword will actually initialize a new stack. So I press enter. It will ask me for a name. Now Pulumi CLI, I must say, has done a good job. They give you some good hints as well, and make sure that you are not confused really. So try to read carefully when you're trying it for the first time. So now I have the stack name. Notice that they are defining dev as the default stack name. So because we want to use the same name, I'll be using or typing dev itself, but you're free to type, let's say Hardik or MS Reactor as well. So I'll simply say dev, press enter. You may notice that because that was successfully done, it says created the stack successfully. I mean, just says created stack, that's it. So now what I can do is I can simply say Pulumi stack up, or so if I do that, okay, my mistake, it is just Pulumi up. So when I do Pulumi up, it will try and compare your program versus the reference in the Pulumi account that you have created. It will try to correlate. Imagine like git commits, etc. It will try to compare your version of code, and it will automatically tell you what changes are pending. So you may notice it has done some interesting details automatically. So you can notice that it says that this infrastructure needs to be created. You can notice that it will be Azure resource group, it will be Azure App Insights, it will be Azure Plan or the App Service Plan, and it will be two of them as app services. So do I want to continue? I'll use my arrow cursors on my keyboard and I will select yes. So I will just wait. You can notice that the program is building. So because it's a .NET project running on .NET Core, it is actually building the program. And you can now notice the status here that it says creating. So it's already defining the stacks and everything else. And you can now notice that the next step it is doing is creating the resource group itself. You may notice it's pretty fast. So within a minute, it should be able to successfully provision the entire infrastructure. And while this is happening, you may notice that the resource group is already created as a status. So if I switch to my Azure portal, you may notice that in all of these resource groups, there is no resource group that starts with the word dev. So it does not start with the word dev. So there is nothing like that. So I'll refresh it in my resource group section. You may notice that we have a resource group called dev MS Reactor resource group, because that is the naming convention we use. So if I click on it, it will show me some resources. Great. It is showing me the app service plan, and it is showing me the application insights. Two resources are pending, which was the app services itself, the API and the web. So it is still in creating, as you can see in the CLI. So I'll just wait for the CLI to finish the creation. Rather, let me refresh and let's see what happens. Okay, so as you can see, it's already ready in this particular portal. I can see all of my resources are ready to use. I'll jump in the dev or the web section. And because it's a web app, I can click on the website link or the link itself, and I should see a default welcome page. So I'll just wait for the service to warm up and reply. And of course, while that is happening, if I visit my CLI, it will tell you that it took 1 minute 45 seconds and it created 6 resources. How brilliant is that? Now, this is all good. I mean, this is manually done. I mean, I am doing this manually from my side, basically. I'm manually doing it from the laptop. But instead, what we want to really do is we want this to be automatic. And for that, we'll be using something called as a build pipeline from Azure DevOps, basically. Now, as we were speaking, you can notice that the service is available, or in this case, the app service is available, and it is just showing you some default HTML page, basically. And of course, you can customize more depending upon what you want to do. Now, because we are focusing only on infrastructure, I'm not really talking about how to deploy the website itself. I mean, your program or a regular website. Maybe we'll do another session doing CI/CD or DevOps itself. But right now, I'm just focusing on the Pulumi itself. So imagine that we have the infrastructure running, etc., etc. Now, what I want to do is, if I come back to my web and if I go to my configuration, most of you who have experience using Azure or app services in general, you might have noticed that the application settings and connection strings are really helpful. But you might have also understood that because of the conventional web.config experience, you might have really had the hard time setting those values and things like that. How about if the infrastructure team could have done that more easily? Or imagine you being able to do that on demand. For example, what I do is I'll modify the code that we saw right now such a way that we will introduce a new key value pair. These are nothing but key value pairs. So if I click here, you can see that it is paired to that particular application insight, which is of not much use right now, but it's obviously useful. So what I want to do is I want to introduce, so I'll say app service settings.add, I'll say MS Reactor. So I'm just using some key value pair, just a regular key value pair here. Now I have modified my program. Now you understand this. Imagine you are a programmer, you modify a program, you will build and compile and you will deploy and things like that. Here also something similar will happen. But obviously for now we are doing it manually. So I'll just execute. Let me just clear my window here. So I've just run the clear command because I'm using terminal. If it's Windows command prompt, it will be CLS as a clear screen command anyways. So what I want to do is I want to simply run Pulumi up once again. The good thing is because it now has the history of what your infrastructure looks like for the dev stack, it will now compare and it will tell you that what are the changes pending. And the only change pending is in the app settings, but the same app setting is applied to both app services. So it will show you that there is an update available for 2 resources. How good is that? This is really awesome. So it does not let you simply bypass any mistakes also. The good part is it will actually give you the visual perspective of what actually is going to happen if you continue with that. In this case, I'm confident, so I will select yes, but in real world scenario, you might want to carefully understand the changes and make sure everything is correctly done. So I'll select yes for now because I want to update the app settings, and it's again going to build it again, compile it, and then it will simply execute it via Pulumi itself. And while that's happening, we'll just give it a quick time. So it says running. Okay, so I think my headphones have disconnected from that particular setup. The battery has been limited, so I'll just pair it once again, just a second. So I hope my headphones, yep, they are paired better. Okay, so as you can see for yourself that the update operation was successfully completed. So if I visit my portal and if I refresh the app settings section of that particular web application or the app service, if I refresh, I'll continue. You can notice that we now have our key value pair defined with the value is an awesome community. So how interesting is this? I mean, imagine me or you as a software engineer just defining the right, wiring it as if you are writing your conventional C# or JavaScript program, and just it's as simple as firing it up via the compiler, and that's it. it does the magic for you. So this is way better. I mean, in my personal, and this is my personal opinion, by the way. I'm not trying to sell you Pulumi as a platform. That's not the goal. The goal is to convince you that doing infrastructure as code is really helpful. It really saves a lot of hassle, and it actually improves your overall life cycle of infrastructure management. Because it is in version control, you can always roll back to a certain version or a certain state of your infrastructure. So what we just saw was a very simple demo of what you can do with Pulumi. And obviously, for example, let me just walk you back into Pulumi documentation. So if I just jump into the Pulumi documentation, I can actually choose an environment. Let's say I choose Azure in this case, because that's what we're talking about. So if you click on it, it will ask you to install and stuff like that, etc., etc. So what we want to do is I want you to understand the API reference, which is available on the left-hand side, somewhere in the bottom. So if I click API reference, you can then choose from the plethora of, from a bunch of all the supported ecosystems. So these are the bunch of ecosystems Pulumi supports as of today, like as we are talking, basically. It supports a lot of database environments. It supports a lot of different hosting and deployment management tools, etc., etc. And obviously, it also supports native cloud providers as well. So I can click on Azure, and I can choose from any service I am interested to learn about that. Okay, how can I create, let's say, an SQL Server database, for example? So I can look up for SQL Server. So if I go into SQL, you can notice that how can I create a database? So they have done a very good job with some real world programming examples. So for example, if I switch between the choice of programming language between TypeScript, which is nothing but JavaScript in general, but of course with some greater C# benefits in it. You have Python. I mean, so it makes your experience much simplified. It allows you to try as soon as you can. So the onboarding experience is much efficient, basically. So this is all you need to do to define an SQL Server environment from your C# program. Now, this is really exciting. Probably it's like a homework for you to try after the session, maybe by next week or whenever you get some free time. So what I want to do now is basically, we just walk through ourselves through a basic C# driven Pulumi program, that how the infrastructure can work. But I want you to understand one thing. If I come back to my Azure here, let me just close these things here. So if I come back to Azure, you may notice that my resource group has a prefix called dev. All my resources within the resource group has a prefix called dev, and so on. Now, this is not really important. I mean, you may use a different naming convention, but that's what I have done it explicitly in this particular case. It is not taking dev because of the name of the stack. It is reading the environment name from the config file that I have created. So if you may notice in line number 2 here, the environment value says dev. For example, just for your knowledge, if I change it to pre-prod and save it, and then when I go to CLI, let me just clear my window once again. And now if I say Pulumi up, notice that it has changed the prefix of all the resources. So it will do something exciting for us automatically. I mean, it will, at least it will suggest that what are the things to modify on Azure. There you go. So you can notice that it will actually delete all resources which are having the old name dev something, and instead it will create a fresh copy, or it will redeploy newer resources with a new name, basically. So what I wanted you to understand was that in case if you are wondering, the dev word was picked by Pulumi because that is the name of the stack. No, that is not how it works. It is like a meaning C# logic that I have put in my stack here, basically. So you may notice that I am putting the name with the environment as a prefix. So I can say that it's dev, pre-prod, or in some cases, I can also say alpha, beta, depending upon the stage. Different companies have different staging names, etc. So it's really up to you, basically. So I select no, I don't want to execute this change. I select no, I'll just let it be. I'll clear my console, so let it be like that. Now, what I want to do is that I wanted to automate this completely. This is like a one-time effort I want to make, unless and until there is a change in the infrastructure itself. I don't want to touch it again. But every time I want to run it, it should be as simple as me firing a pipeline or CLI. Now, you might have noticed that, of course, I can do the CLI also, but I want to do it from the an automated fashion. So what I want to do is, I'll take you to my particular Azure DevOps pipeline. So I have a public repository, basically. Again, the link and the references to this pipeline, etc., is available created by me, which is dev ms reactor GitHub CI. Now, what we are doing is, just to help you understand, if I go to GitHub, I have this repository, which we'll be sharing with you once the demo is done. Obviously, it is part of the slide also, but you can also obtain the slides from the GitHub repository itself. And there are some descriptions also that how you can do it yourself, etc., etc. So what you saw as a demo, it's already part of this particular GitHub repository. The same things, everything is the same, what I'm showing you right now, basically. So I welcome you to download and clone this so that you can try and give it a try. If you face errors, feel free to tweet to me, feel free to write an email, why it's not working, etc., etc. I'll be happy to help you. But I encourage you to try this at least once, basically. So anyway, so this is already there with me on my GitHub. So for simplicity, I'm using Azure DevOps pipelines because the GitHub Actions do not have a proprietary Pulumi steps or Pulumi helpers, basically. It means that it was just too much of my personal time to put in and wire all the manual steps myself. So to be very honest with you, I was just lazy not to do that, but instead to make the experience working of the demo, what I did was I created the pipeline in my Azure DevOps account here, which you can see. And if I jump into the pipeline, now I imagine not all of you are using Azure DevOps, and that's totally okay. You can do this with Octopus and other options as well. The only benefit, as I was trying to say, was that Pulumi steps or Pulumi tasks were available in this particular Azure DevOps pipeline itself. So by the way, just to let you know, this is not available by default. For example, if I search for Pulumi in my Azure DevOps steps, now how do I do that? So I select my build or run on agent step, I click the plus button, and I can then search for a relevant tool or a runtime. You can notice that it is already added by me, basically, but Pulumi is an external marketplace item. So you need, it's a free installation, you don't need a license, etc. But just for your information, it's not by default available to you. You will have to search for it and install it from the marketplace, basically. So what I did is I configured my Pulumi stack such a way that I initialize a new stack. So the stack is a variable available in my pipeline, meaning I can change these values and it will automatically define a runtime environment or an infrastructure for me depending upon the values that I put in, basically. So if you may notice, it just creates a new stack. It will choose that particular stack that we created. It might be pre-prod, prod, whatsoever. And then ultimately it will deploy that particular stack. So what we want to do is, and of course you may notice that we are transforming the config.json file. So what we are doing is that, just to help you understand, this is a config file that, as I told you in the beginning, created by me. Basically, this is not provided or created by Pulumi in any way. This is not even endorsed by Pulumi themselves. Probably they hate me for doing this, but anyway, the goal here is to give you some idea. So I have this JSON structure and I want to replace the values, or the idea is that on demand, I should be able to modify the JSON before I run this, so that I'm able to, obtain dynamic abilities. So I can run the same stack or the same program across my stages. So dev, pre-prod, prod, etc., whatever it is. So this is why we have the file transform step here, basically. So under variables, what I can do is I can modify the whole ecosystem, but instead of doing that, now this is completely live with you guys. I mean, I haven't done that already. If you may notice, that's the only pipeline. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically create a new pipeline. So I'll clone the pipeline, and instead of dev, I'll call it pre-prod. And dev is already done manually, isn't it? So who wants to do dev again? So I'm creating a new experience. So I'm picking it from the GitHub account, or you can see that I am connected via GitHub. It's an OAuth connection. Probably you guys also have done this once in your time when you use GitHub with your own favorite tool. And to make sure that everything is correct, what I do is I'll also change the branch to be pre-production. So it means that the pre-production should have the Pulumi project and things like that. So that's the only change that I'm applying. In the variable, you may notice that because of my previous test run, I already have pre-prod, etc. as values defined. The stack name is pre-prod, environment is pre-prod. So it's already available for me. Importantly, you may notice that I have something called as Pulumi access token. Now, this is how you need to define in configuring your pipeline. So Pulumi defines an access token. So if I just go to my Pulumi account, if I go to settings, and if I go to access tokens, you can create a new access token, and that value is nothing but what I have currently pasted it here, basically. One of the token is here, basically. Unless you do that, it will basically not work correctly, basically. So what I want to do now is, since this basic structure is available for me, I'll just save this, or rather what I also want to do is I want to change the trigger. So what I want to do is I want to enable CI. What I'm trying to really show you is that as soon as I update my pre-production branch in my GitHub account or the particular repository, it should automatically go and deploy the pre-production environment for me, basically. So that's what my goal is. That's what I want to do. So I'll just click on save only. I will not run it right now, because the idea is that I do a pull request from development to pre-production, and it will automatically deploy the infrastructure. So I'll come back here in the pipeline view. So I have two pipelines now. One is dev, one is pre-prod. It hasn't run yet. I'll go to my GitHub. I'll go to my pull request. I'll create a new pull request. So it's so what I want to do is I want to compare between. Right, so there are 10 commits and 14 files have changed. I'll click on create a pull request. I'll say just some dummy statements here. So if you may notice, I'll be merging 10 commits into pre-production from development. So when you are doing this on your GitHub or any type of source control, just make sure you are doing it the right way. That's it. And once that's there, I'll just merge the pull request. I'll accept my changes, and I have merged them. So if I go to my code on my GitHub, and if I switch my branch, you should notice that pre-production also has those changes available. So if I come here in the pipeline section, because we enabled the CI, you can notice that it has automatically started my infrastructure deployment. It's already running, so we'll give it some time. And while that is happening, I'd like to take some questions. So in case if you have questions, I can see that there are some questions already there. Sorry, I was not seeing at the question section. So why to use Pulumi instead of say Terraform? So I believe you got the answer that Terraform or other options on the market, they depend on you learning their own scripting language or domain specific language. With Pulumi, the biggest advantage is that your onboarding experience is much faster because of the simple ability of using your own programming language or choice of programming language, basically. So it's mainly focused on those who are coming from a software engineering background in general. So the adoption is much simpler. The learning curve is less tedious in general. Of course, the reality is, of course, that as an engineer, I do need to know the cloud-related keywords, such as I need to know what a resource group is or an Amazon S3 storage is, etc. I need to understand what those things are, obviously. So those So that knowledge is of course needed before you can really take that advantage, of course. So now Terraform 2 has language-based compatibility. What edge does Pulumi has? Not really. I would not really say that there is any difference. Obviously, yeah. I mean, and you slowly see that everybody is adopting to compatible options such as writing in your own choice of language. So yeah. Is Pulumi free for prod also? Technically, yes. The community plan is single individual use. So what I was showing is me just logged in and using it for my own needs or my own use. So yeah, so it is just available for free. But the only problem is it is limited only for a single user, and you get limited. There is no team management. So if you want collaboration between team, no, technically the community plan won't work. You will have to upgrade to a paid plan, which allows you to manage across teams and across other customer resources, basically. So please share the GitHub repo where we can find. Yes, we'll be sharing that with you. Is our infra code getting saved in our GitHub? Yes, that is correct. That is saved in GitHub. But so I think those were the questions. Yeah. So just to answer particularly the question where it is saved in the GitHub. Now I understand probably the question is mainly about why to do this on GitHub or any source control. So the idea is, if you may notice, the program that you see here, it's kind of explicit as in the kind, the tier, or the size of the environment, or the location of environment. I mean, these things are abstract. For example, I am not writing the location name here itself. Instead, what I'm doing is I'm rather reading it from a config file. Yes, I understand. Think of it like a normal website development that you might have done. Like you do have web config file available for you as a developer in your Visual Studio, or think of a HTTP settings file in your Apache or JavaScript setting that you may use. What you normally do is you define those values explicitly for yourself, because those are accounts or privileges shared with you, basically. Let's say you are setting a SQL Server password in config file. That is fairly okay when you're talking about development resources, because you don't risk at leaking those resources, because technically they are just dev and test, so probably you also delete them time to time. But imagine when you're talking about production resources in general, do not put them directly in the config file. Rather, what I've done is I've made the config file available in the project itself. So the benefit, of course, as you can see, the pre-prod is also deployed successfully. So benefit I get is, for example, just to help you understand better, because I'm using the pre-prod as my variable name, you can notice that my environment automatically picks that particular variable value. Imagine that the developer team is not having access to this pipeline. Now, I'm not trying to say that that should be the case, but the point here being that it is up to us to abstract the security out of the C# program or the JavaScript program that you have written for your infrastructure. So it is as simple as that. You will have to take care of abstracting the resources in general, basically. I hope that has answered your question in general, basically. And I see that there are some remarks about my voice, but I hope it has been fixed now, basically. Or that I am sharing the correct experience. Let me just make sure that I'm sharing it. Okay, so what we are doing now is that, if you may notice, like this is the pipeline that we ran with you. Basically, it was not already available. I did it with you right now, basically. So I just created a pre-prod pipeline. And if I go to that particular infrastructure or this particular Azure account, I'll just refresh. And I can see that my pre-prod environment is available just like that. Now, if I jump into the web or the app service in this case, if I go to configuration, obviously you will not find the changes that I have applied via my current program, because the app settings or the changes that I have applied, let's say this particular line, it is not pushed to the repository, meaning the pull request did not include that particular change. So obviously it was not able to deploy successfully, or it was not able to take those changes into account. So in general, this is like a brief introduction. Obviously, we are out of time, running out of time, I believe, and the real benefit of using Pulumi is to make sure that you're able to adapt faster and you're able to embrace infrastructure as code, because you're able to also add it to version control in general. That's the biggest advantage people should consider rather than choosing the choice of tools. I mean, I'm more of a pragmatic person, so I'm not just advocating using Pulumi. I'm advocating use anything that makes your infrastructure lifecycle management simpler for you and your team members, basically. So having said that, these are some steps which you can see, which I was anyway walking you through. So I'm, by the way, trying to show you my presentation itself. I'm not trying to open the presentation window, otherwise it will probably hang again or disconnect once again, basically. And go basically. In short, what happens is that when you are adapting to Pulumi or Azure, in general, what you also know now is that you are not able to understand what to use with Azure itself. In short, you might be using AWS or something. So if you're somebody new trying to do all this, try to understand the cloud environment itself, whatever you are using. If you're using AWS, please try to refer to its documentation. Try to understand what the environment is, what infrastructure is on Azure, what are those keywords, etc., or what is it in Azure, what does it look like on Google, etc., so that you're able to adapt much better, basically. And along with that, before we wrap up, I want you to understand or introduce you to an interesting Learn resource. So Microsoft Learn is an initiative wherein every documentation is now considered as a learning experience. So it's part of this particular slide itself. So if you open that link itself from that particular presentation, you'll be taken to a curated list of learning path for how to create, efficient and highly available Azure infrastructure, basically. Now, because we are talking infrastructure, so knowing that is also much important. And so we have already curated a set of learning path for you. So I recommend you to please go through that as well, basically, whenever you get time. So I recommend you to do that. And this is my contact. So you can tweet to me at the mistryhardik05, or you can send me an email at mistryhardik.05@live.com. For anything you may want to know more about Pulumi, you want to know more about Azure, or in general anything, community, this and that, work from home, whatever it is that you want to know more about, try to reach out to me. So with that, I will obviously I have the session links available in the slides itself. So once you receive the slides, it will be self-sufficient. Let me just verify. So the Pulumi repository is available in the slides itself. So it will be you'll be able to access it much easily, basically. So I think that's it. That's a wrap from my side. So I'll thank you so much for attending and spending your wonderful afternoon with me. So with that, I'll hand it over back to Sam, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you, Hardik, for today's session. I'm starting to present. All right. So a quick reminder about the survey. This is for you to tell us more about the topics you'd love to see at the reactor. There is a code for each session that we're doing, so please use that. I put the link and the number there for you as an announcement in the Q&A, so please spend a minute to give us this feedback. And also, I want to mention a few things. We're obviously having Ignite this week, so make sure you register and join this event. It's a global event for developers and IT professionals, a 3-day virtual conference packed with content that will provide you both valuable and practical skills that you need on your day-to-day jobs, and it helps you understand where technology is going next. So check that and register on myignite.microsoft.com. The links and everything also is shared on Meetup, and we have a workshop on Monday on building Ethereum smart contracts using Solidity. So smart contracts are code that verify and enforce behavior on the Ethereum platform. They regulate the transfer of digital assets and currency. And in this workshop, you'll learn how to use this in developing your own smart contracts. So join us. There are more learning opportunities for you as well on meetup.com. There is also a session with Rory Preddy, the cloud advocate, on integrating reactive APIs with your traditional relational database on September the 30th. And yeah, check out our YouTube channel. This is how you can access all the past session recordings. You can view the session after we end the live today for the next maybe 16 hours, but later on it will be on our YouTube channel. So join us there and also subscribe to our newsletter. This is for you to receive a monthly curated email on the latest sessions that we're doing from Reactor Abu Dhabi, from the global team as well, from the different reactors. You can also select what you would like to get notified about. And that's it. Stay safe, everyone, and goodbye.
Thank you, everybody. Goodbye. Have a great day ahead. Bye-bye.